What's going on, everybody? Back here today with another video of the Faction Spotlight series. And today we're going to be taking a look at the 9th faction to make its way into the Twilight Imperium 4 browser app, and that is the L1Z1X Mindnet. So I have the faction sheet open here, and we can take a look first at the faction abilities. We got 2 of them. So the first one is Assimilate. And it reads that when we gain control of a planet, we're going to be able to replace each PDS and space dock that is on that planet with a matching unit from our reinforcements. So indeed, if you don't have units that match those structures from your reinforcements, the app will enforce that and you won't actually be able to replace them. They'll just be destroyed as normal. But if you do, then you'll be able to use the Assimilate faction ability, and it happens automatically. We also have Harrow, which is a really unique ability that allows us to perform bombardment if we're capable at the end of each round of space combat. And we'll see these implemented shortly in my sample game that I have. For faction technologies, we have a unit tech, which is the Super Dreadnought 2, which we'll see. And then there's also inheritance systems that we'll take a look at once we make our way into the game. Finally, we have the Flagship, which it reads that during a space combat, if we produce hits with this ship and any dreadnoughts in the system, then any hits that are assigned as a result, we have to assign those to non-fighter ships if possible. So in the lore sheet, we can see the starting units here: 1 dreadnought, 1 carrier, 3 fighters, 5 infantry, 1 space dock, and 1 PDS, as well as starting technologies of neural motivator and plasma score. So let's jump into our game here and take a look at what we got. So we're playing it from the perspective of Alice as the L1Z1X Mindnet. And we're going to begin here by looking at one of our faction technologies, which is inheritance systems. So inheritance system says that we may exhaust this card and also spend 2 resources when we research a technology. As such, we can ignore all of that technology's prerequisites. So let's go ahead and activate the technology primary and see how that works. Right, so as the player of the technology primary, we get to research 2 technologies. And with inheritance systems, we actually have some flexibility with how we want to do this. So the first thing is, if you're going to be using inheritance systems, you have to let the app know, and you do that by double-clicking the card. And so since we haven't used it yet this turn, we'll be told that we'll be exhausting this card when we research our next technology. And if we wanted to unselect it, we can do that. Just double-click it again, and then we won't be using it, right? So let's just see how that works, because it's not passive. So right away, if we just wanted to research the 1 technology for free, like for example, if we wanted to research a war sun, which we obviously don't have the prereqs for, and we go to resolve strategy and we click check, the prerequisite's not met because, well, we're not telling the game that we want to use inheritance systems. Now, if we do double-click inheritance systems now, and we go to resolve strategy, and we go to click the check mark, well, now we meet the prerequisites, but of course we have to spend the 2 resources, right? So if I were to click my 2 trade goods here, which count as resources, now I would be able to research the war sun, right? So that works for 1 tech. Now, we could also do it for 2 techs, right? So let's say I wanted to research assault cannon right away, right? And then because if I were able to research assault cannon, then I should also be able to research war sun. Because if I research assault cannon first, I get those red prereqs, which could then go on to researching the war sun, right? So I can do that as well. So first I double click assault cannon, and then I go ahead and double click the war sun. Now, if I just try to spend 6 resources, I'll be told that I can't because we have to spend an additional 2, right? Because you have to spend at least 8 resources to research 2 technologies with inheritance systems. So if I spend 2 more, now I can research assault cannon and the war sun, right? But take note here that the order mattered. So if I reset this, and if I try to research the war sun first, then inheritance systems will have to apply to that first. And because the war sun tech, these don't count towards prerequisites, if I try to then research assault cannon, and now I go to spend the 8 resources, I'm going to be told that the second technology prerequisites are not met. So of course the order matters, because first you research one technology and then you use the prerequisites from that one along with the second, right? So that's just to give you an idea of how inheritance systems works. But let's say, let's go ahead and say, because we're the L1Z1X Mindnet, maybe we want to research this Super Dreadnought 2, but we don't have the 2 propulsion techs. So if we go ahead and research fleet logistics for free, and along with our 2 prerequisites from inheritance systems, we'll be able to research Super Dreadnought 2. So if we spend the 8 resources now, and we confirm our choices, now indeed we can see it in our own technology deck. We have those 2 thanks to inheritance systems. And so now we have both of our faction techs ready to go, and our dreadnoughts on the board have been upgraded accordingly. The other thing I didn't mention about in the preview here about the Super Dreadnought 2 is, and even just the Super Dreadnought 1, is the capacity is 2 instead of 1. So that's really nice for transport purposes. So here in the game log, we can see that, yeah, we got fleet logistics in Super Dreadnought 2, but if players were keeping track of our technologies and saying, well, how did he research those? Well, then the game also tells us that we used inheritance systems to do that. Now if we try to double click inheritance systems, we can't because it's exhausted. So it'll be ready for our next turn. All right. So we'll go ahead and pass on the technology secondary from the other players. And now bring us back to our turn since the other players have passed. So now we're going to be able to take a look at our faction abilities here, which are combat oriented, right? And if we look over here, we're going to be able to take our ships from this system and we're going to invade this system here and hopefully see how Assimilate and Harrow work. As well as we have our flagship in this system. So we'll be able to see the 0.0.1 flagship ability in action. So let's go ahead and activate this system here, the Abyss Fria system. We'll go ahead and pass on the ability round. And we'll have the other players pass on the ability round as well. And we'll go ahead and move our ships, and we'll take the 4 infantry with them. So we have 4 infantry, our flagship, and 2 dreadnoughts. All right, so we're going to pass on any abilities at the start of a round of space combat. So we'll Bob. And Bob's not going to retreat here. So we're going to roll dice. And then we'll see we produce 2 hits. And let's see that in the game log, in the roll summary. We can see that our flagship produced a hit, and the Super Dreadnought 2 produced a hit. And now we'll wait for Bob to roll. and Bob has produced 1 hit. So before we get to the flagship ability, let's go ahead and sustain damage here, maybe with our Dreadnought. So that cancels that hit. And then before Bob assigns hits. Alright, so let's take a look here. I'm going to go into, I'm going to log out here of Alice's game tab. And we're going to log into Bob. Because I want to show the flagship ability here on the screen for everyone to see. So we have to assign hits as Bob. Recall here's the active system, right? Now we have 2 hits to assign according to the game log. Let's see what happens if we try to assign one of those hits to a fighter and perhaps to this destroyer. If we click OK, we can see here that we have not assigned enough hits to non-fighter ships, and that's because of the flagship ability from the opposing side, right? So we can't assign a hit to this fighter because we have the option to non-fighter ships. So if we do, let's assign a hit to this Dreadnought, and we get the warning, but that's fine, and to this carrier, and now we can confirm the hit, and we can see that that went through. All right, so we'll go back into Alice's account here. And we'll finish the space combat here. So we'll go through these rounds. And then we're at the start of a space combat. And this time we'll have Bob retreat if possible. And then we'll roll. But we produce 4 hits, so Bob's not going to be able to retreat, most likely. Well, not most likely, he won't. Alright, and so Bob will assign those hits. And just do that in the tab we have open. Alright, so now we're at the end of space combat. So we're able to show you there how the flagship ability works for the Mindnet. Now, here we are in the active system, and we can see that our Super Dreadnought 2, we have 2 of them, and they both have bombardment. So we're able to perform the bombardment ability. But I don't want to perform the bombardment before the combat begins because I don't want to wipe out all the infantry, because I want to be able to show off one of the faction abilities here, which is Harrow. So let's go ahead and just pass on bombardment. And now we're being asked to commit infantry here to the active system. So maybe we have 4 infantry. Maybe we want to commit 2 to Abyss and 2 to Freya. So let's do that. And then we can confirm this, right? So we'll do that. And then we'll start the combat on Abyss. Alright, so any abilities before ground combat we're going to pass on here. Okay, and so now we're gonna roll for space combat or ground combat, and we make 0 hits. So it's not making much progress from Alice's point of view. Bob also rolls 0 hits, But now, instead of going straight to the next round of combat, the game app automatically recognizes what faction we're playing, and we're being asked to resolve the Harrow ability. Now, if you're new to the app and you're not sure about all these timing windows, the help button is really good for this. So we click the help button, we get prompted here. How do I use Harrow? So if you are the L1Z1X player, you can go over to your info tab and click the blue icon, the blue info icon. You can access Harrow there. If you do not wish to use Harrow, you can click pass. So Harrow is indeed optional, and this is probably in the spirit of negotiating something like this. So you can, if Bob was really desperate here, you could try to negotiate a trade here to not use Harrow. But the pass button is available, but we're not going to do that. We'll go over to our player info tab, and you can see beside Harrow, right, we have the use button. So now if we click use and we confirm, we use bombardment in the active system, and we actually produce 2 hits here. And if we refresh a biz, you can see that those 2 units are now gone because the 2 dreadnoughts are able to hit. And let's see that in the game log. So in the roll summary, we have one of our super dreadnoughts hit twice due to plasma scoring and 1 missed. And the game log tells everyone that Alice used the Harrow ability. So we essentially just won that combat, right? Now we still have to, in the game prompt here, we have to resolve the other ground combat, so let's do that. And we go through the same process here. So we'll roll for ground combat. No hits again. Bob rolls. No hits. And again, we have the upper hand here because we can use Harrow. And this time we actually hit with all of them. So that wipes out all of Bob's units. So really, really quite strong here, as you can see. So in a typical ground combat, we would have to keep rolling there, but Harrow really shows its strength here in this situation. Now, the final thing to show is the Assimilate faction ability. And I'll remind you what it says. When you gain control of a planet, replace each PDS and space dock that is on that planet with a matching unit from your reinforcements. So you'll notice that after the ground combat resolved on a biz, the space dock is still yellow, and that's because gaining control of the planets doesn't happen until the established control step is finished, right? Now let's make sure that we indeed have enough space docks for this replacement to happen, right? And you can see we have 2 here, so we should be able to replace this with the 3rd space dock from our reinforcements. So right now it's yellow. Once we establish control, if we click it again, now you'll see it's black and even on the game board there. So we have the Assimilate ability, which is really cool. And then we can end our turn. So as far as the Super Dreadnought 2 goes, there isn't really anything particular to show off. It's the same as a regular Dreadnought, except of improved stats, capacity, being able to synergize with the Harrow ability and whatnot. But yeah, that's the Mindnet. So with that brings us to our 9th faction, which would have been over the halfway point if we're just talking about vanilla TI4, but as you know, with the expansion coming out, got a lot of work to do in that respect. If you have any comments, suggestions, notice something that wasn't right with the implementation of the faction, feel free to leave a comment down below. Otherwise, look forward to seeing them get play tested in the days to come. And yeah, thanks for watching the video, and we'll see you next time. Take care.